she just like walked up to me and was like, did you know that you're fat? Really not feeling confident in who I was because I was like, oh, well, if this boy doesn't like me, it's because of the way I look. And once you start seeing yourself as the person that you truly are, then that beauty is going to start to flow from your heart. Sometimes body image issues don't go away. Perspective of who I can be when I, let myself die to these old thoughts. When I am able to let Jesus shine through me, that is when I'll be my most beautiful version of myself.
Hello, friends, and welcome to the podcast. Spring is in the air, and episode 4 is finally here. In today's episode, I want to introduce you to my friend Easton. Since before middle school, Easton has struggled with body image issues and the way she has perceived her own beauty. In our conversation, we talk about how body image plays a role in high school dating, how being a collegiate athlete affects the way you see your own body, and how social media plays a role in our modern definitions of beauty. Easton's honesty and candidness were really refreshing for me to hear, and I hope that's the case for you too. As you listen to the episode, if anyone pops into your mind that you know who could benefit from this conversation, please take the time to share it with them. In addition, please like, rate, and follow the podcast so that others can be encouraged by stories like Easton's. I'm really glad you could join us in this conversation. Let's get started. Easton, welcome to the show.
Hey, Pat. Hello, world.
Got an icebreaker for you today that I spent way too long looking because I couldn't decide what would fit your personality when really I should have just chosen any one of them. But the one that really stood out to me, because you have Maddie in your life, is tell of one moment where you did something bad and you're able to get away with it because you're able to blame it on Maddie. And Maddie's Easton's younger sister.
Yes, she's my wonderful younger sister, and I love her so much. Something that I got away with because I blamed her for it. See, that's a hard one because I feel like most of the time I didn't ever blame her for anything. Not to brag, I was a good sister, but I'm just kidding. I mean, the first story that pops into my mind that would kind of fit that description would be one time we were folding laundry. So my mom would have us fold our laundry together on laundry days. This is when we were really young, by the way. This wasn't like 2 years ago. For some reason, like just folding our laundry together brought out the worst in us. Like we would get so heated with one another. It was like we would just start screaming. And I think that it was because one or the other of us thought that like a certain item of clothing belonged to us, but it was really the other person's clothes.
Okay.
This is going to make me sound so horrible, but I've apologized for it so many times and I feel so bad, but I got so mad that I slapped her across the face. and my mom heard it from like our living room. And I literally, like, it was one of those things where like I slapped her and we both were like, and then I was like, I'm going to get in so much trouble. I heard my mom come like running down the hall. And then we both just started busting up laughing. Like we were just laughing so hard. And I think I started off like giggling really nervously because I was like, right. I'm about to get beaten up by my own mother. And then she started laughing. So then I started laughing harder. And then Maddie, I don't even remember how old we were. We were in elementary school, but she just was like, okay. Oh yeah, we were fighting over clothes and it's fine. Like we figured it out. And I was just like, my sister could have just gotten me in so much trouble, but we both laughed about it. And yeah, that's my story. I mean, yeah, again, nothing I really blamed her for that I got away with, but that's the first story that popped into my head.
Is that the only time you've slapped her across the face?
It's the only time I've slapped her across the face. One of Maddie's favorite stories, though, is I think it was another laundry situation where we were fighting over laundry.
Okay.
And we were wrestling because of it. We loved to wrestle for some reason. And I like had her by her shoulders and I pushed her backwards and she fell onto the couch and like it broke. Like the whole couch broke. And again, we just started like dying laughing at it because we were like, oh my gosh, look at how strong I am. I just pushed you in the couch and it broke. So yeah, my mom always made fun of us because she was like, you guys fight like boys, but you're girls. And we were like, haha, yeah, whatever. And it's totally true.
Seems like all your arguments can get to a certain point and then humor kicks in.
I don't know if that's really unhealthy or not, but I think it might be.
Well, I'm glad you're both alive, although she might have a handprint on her face.
Yeah, yeah, there's a scar left there. So, oops, sorry.
I don't know if I've told you this already, but when I started this podcast, you were one of the first people to pop into my mind as an interview guest.
Oh,
You've been
Pat.
very, very open about a lot of things that you've been through, that you've processed through the years, ever since senior year of high school. And for those listening, Easton and I attended high school together. We played on worship band together. We went to a concert. We're basically best friends, even though we haven't spoken to each other for years.
Yep, you got it.
And I knew too you'd be very honest about it, about this topic, because of the way that you've spoken about it, even on social media. And
Mm-hmm.
so let's start where we always start. What is your I used to think statement? And after that, what is your now I think statement?
Yeah. So I used to think that I was unloved, undervalued, and undesirable because of my body image issues. But now I think the complete opposite of those things. I know that I'm loved and I know that I'm valued and desired because of Jesus.
How would you define body image? Or maybe there's a definition that you already have in your head that's straight from Webster's.
I mean, I haven't looked it up in Webster's dictionary, but I mean, I know that it's different for a lot of people, what body image means to them, but for me, it most of the time was like my physique and the way that my body was built. And I think that a lot of the things that factor into the way that I thought about like body image was because I was an athlete for so long, and just having like this misconception of what like my body needed to look like because I was an athlete. And I can unpack that a little bit more later on if we want to. But another thing too is just like I had a lot of insecurities with my acne in high school and in college and stuff, and that played a lot of it just played a lot into my body image issues. Although it wasn't like my physique, it was still part of something that people saw on my face every day because that's really what people would look at. You know, you talk to somebody,
Right.
you're looking at their face all the time. So that I think was another, yeah, just really big thing that was really hard to deal with, especially in high school. I think high school was the worst that I ever had to deal with, like my body image issues. And I think that that's just because when you're a teenager, like people are just mean.
True.
And but even when people aren't mean, like men and women just like they're they're so hard on themselves, especially in the teenage years. So
Is there a moment, and I definitely want to unpack being a collegiate athlete, because I think in that sense you have a very unique story.
mhm.
But starting at high school or wherever your story would start, was there a moment that was most triggering for you? I know some people, they remember a comment, right, in eighth grade, sixth grade, and that almost opened up this whole world of insecurity instantly.
Yeah. Yeah. I actually was thinking back. I was hoping you would ask me that question. Because I was thinking back to a time when I was like, when was the first time that I ever thought about my body and what it looked like and that it might have looked different to somebody else? And
Right.
it's sad to say, but second grade.
Mm.
Um,
Wow.
yeah. So I would have probably been around like 6 or 7 at the time. And I just remember like I was on the playground, and California can be really hot sometimes. And when you're little, you don't just sit there on the bench and talk about stuff. You're running around playing tag and stuff like that. And I had a sweatshirt on that day. And I remember taking my sweatshirt off, and this girl, her name was Samantha, and she just like walked up to me and was like, did you know that you're fat? And like that was the first time that I was just like, what? Like
Right.
nobody had ever said that to me before, and I was just really confused.
Right.
But that was the first time that I ever like shut down and became very self-conscious and never wanted to like let anybody really know what my body looked like. Not that I wanted anybody to see my body, but it's still like, even if a little bit of my shirt like rose up from taking off a sweatshirt or something like that, I was so insecure about it from that point on. Yeah, it was just kind of sucks that it happened in the second grade.
I mean, I can't even fathom what would trigger something like that as far as Samantha saying that to you,
Mm-hmm.
because I know often kids just repeat things they hear, but sometimes it really does come from a place of insecurity for them.
Yeah.
Not to excuse what she said to you.
Yeah. No, that's definitely true. Throughout elementary school, like I never really thought too much about my body image. I mean, I would see like some of my other friends who I thought were like a little bit skinnier than me, and like I wasn't a fat kid, and nothing against like kids who are a little bit bigger in elementary school, but like I would say, I was like pretty average. Plus kids in elementary school have a little bit of chub. Like
Yeah, they
that's
got that
normal.
baby fat. Right.
Yeah, like
Gotta
that's
stay
normal.
warm.
Yeah. Yeah, warm in California. Gotta stay warm. Yeah, like I would look at some of my other friends and just be like, oh, like I wish I had, a body like them. Or when you're getting a little bit older, like guys and girls, but for my story, obviously I'm a girl, and like looking at girls who were starting to lose that, you know, baby
Right.
fat, and kind of get more of like the curvature in their bodies and stuff like that, and up on into high school. But yeah, just starting to look at that more and become even more self-conscious, because I'm like, oh, well, I'm like, my body doesn't look like some of the other girls that I was basically idolizing. A similar thing happened in middle school where somebody said, they didn't say that I was fat, but they were like, oh, you have a little bit of pudge in your midsection. But it hurt even more this time because it was a boy that I liked.
That's like crushing
Which,
in middle school.
yeah. And I think it was like sixth grade. So that's like the worst, because it's the beginning of middle school and you're like, oh, I have to live with this for the rest of my life. Like everything is just so dramatic.
Right.
But yeah, I think that really crushed me even more, because at that point in my life too, I thought that, I looked good. I was really happy with who I was in that point in time. And then that just like crushed me even further. But, boys are stupid in middle school and you should never listen to them anyway. So, but I didn't know that in middle school. I did not know that at all. And at this point in time, like I didn't really have the mindset of what my body should look like in terms of like an athlete's perspective. It was more of just like in middle school. When were we in middle school? In like 2012, 13, 14.
Yeah. 11 to 14. Yeah.
Yeah, that's like the era where the standard of beauty was like super skinny, thigh gaps, like basically having no meat on your bones. Like that's what all the models looked like at that time. For me, a girl who played soccer, like literally my whole life up to that point, I was like strong. I would say I was a strong girl. I wasn't like super skinny, but I needed to have some muscle so that I could play the sport that I loved. Um,
I wanted to
but yeah,
I
go
wanted to
ahead.
expand on that because what motivation did you have to even play sports? When you're practicing, you have to wear shorts, you have to wear tank tops when you practice during games,
Yeah,
maybe. Did
yeah.
that play a part in whether you wanted to even continue being an athlete, or was the motivation, I'll be an athlete so that I'm forced to almost keep up my physique?
Yeah. I think in middle school it wasn't so much of that kind of mindset yet where I was like, I'm doing this sport so that I can, keep up my physique. In middle school, I played soccer so that I could hang out with my friends. I think, and Western was a little bit of like a different story because not all middle school teams are co-ed,
Mhm.
but I really liked playing with the boys and like they pushed me to be a better player. I really enjoyed the coach that we had, and I really enjoyed the friends that I made on that team. So playing soccer in middle school really wasn't a whole lot about like, oh, I feel ashamed with the shorts that I'm wearing, or this jersey it's too tight and people are gonna think that I'm fat and they're gonna talk about it. Like that wasn't really something that I thought about too much, because for me, sports was an outlet, especially in middle school. It was a way for me to get away from the distractions of school
Right.
and just go and have fun. I mean, obviously it gets much different in high school. That's when my mindset really changed, was when I was in high school. Where do I even start with high school?
I'm curious how you got to the point where I don't know how many times you posted about it, but I remember just seeing pictures of you on Instagram, right? Pictures of you with acne. And like I was saying, very honest captions about things you had processed and gone through. How did you get to that point? Or what did it take to have that kind of courage?
Yeah. I will say that my acne journey, I guess you could say, kind of started later in high school.
Mhm.
Um, and when I started to get really bad at acne was kind of when my obsession with wanting to change my physique stopped. So I'll come to that in just a second. So I'll start with like freshman year of high school. Freshman year of high school was an interesting time for me because that's when my parents told me that I could start dating boys. Now, I think that that also had kind of a big role in my in the way that I thought that my body needed to look, because in my mind it was like a boy's not going to like me if I'm not super skinny. And I think that, I mean, obviously that was a really toxic thing to be thinking, because now I'm much older and that's not true. I know that boys in high school would always joke like, "Oh, I don't like her for her body. I like her for her personality." Now, in high school, that was a joke because obviously boys in high school liked girls for their body, not their personality. Um, Now that, I'm going to be getting married to the love of my life, I know that he doesn't love me just for like my body. He loves me for who I am as a woman, as a Christian. And it's not just about like, what can I get from you physically? It's like, what can I get from you like as a whole, and how can I love you and make you feel your true self, and also help you to find the love that you need to have for yourself. But anyways, we digress. Going back to high school me, I really did a lot of like my sports, and I would stay after hours in the weight room at school just so that I could look a certain way. Because I was like, well, if I look this way, then this boy that I really like is going to want to date me because I look this way, like I look skinny because of my sport. And I think also just like my body type. Like I'm never going to be, and I never was going to be super skinny. So I don't know why I thought in my head that I could just do it. It was for the boys, I guess. And that was such a stupid thing to think because yeah, it was just
Now's your
naive.
chance. You're in high school. This is the only time you can do it.
I know, I know. It was just me like being naive, and um I felt like I was at this spot where I was like, skinny enough. And then I started dating this guy, and things were going great, kind of. So I thought. And then he wound up cheating on me with some other girl that I found out
Mhm.
later on. And that really crushed me because I was like, oh man, like I felt like I got to this place where I was good enough for someone because of the way I looked. And
Right.
then I wound up getting back together with him. This is Dylan,
Okay.
by the way. Dylan Martinez. Sorry if he's listening, but you really broke my heart.
There's some context,
Yeah,
some unashamed
yeah.
context.
And then found out that he cheated on me a second time. It really crushed me because like the girl that I found out he cheated on me with was like not like the body type that like I wanted, but like she was skinnier than me. She had like a more toned, more athletic kind of body than I had, which is what I was like hoping for. I was just like, oh man, like I really valued this person and I valued our friendship and our relationship. And now, like, I thought because of the way that I looked was the reason that he left. And that kind of played a role into a lot of my other relationships down the road as well. Just like really not feeling confident in who I was because I was like, oh, well, if this boy doesn't like me, it's because of the way I look. And that was, again, really a really toxic thing to be thinking in my head and having this conversation in my head all the time, because it just ruined a lot of relationships and even just like the friendships that I could have had with these guys.
One thing I do want to speak to, I find that when I speak to my interview guests, is that they'll talk about kind of what you were saying. They'll talk about a time in their life and then qualify it with, oh, but I was naive.
Mm,
And looking back, I mean, hindsight's 2020. I say that about things in my life all the time. But I think I want to speak to how the feelings at that time and the emotions are very real
mm,
and very legitimate. And especially like you're saying, this I can't imagine how exciting that must have felt, even just to think about freshman year is the year I could finally date.
mhm.
And I mean, I joked about it before that, this is my only chance, but it's kind of true. It feels that way. And especially if it's an early experience, I mean, to this day, you maybe not relive, but you can still feel that. You remember the pain
Yeah,
and you remember that this is what I felt when there was a standard that I thought I had to reach.
yeah.
And obviously now that standard's changed, but at that time, that was your standard. There was no other.
Mhm.
So I just wanted to speak to that, the legitimacy of that emotion at that time.
Yeah. Thanks, Pat. I appreciate that.
The follow-up question I had, I was curious, was what did you think the narrative was, or what did you feel the narrative was from adults around you when it came to body image,
Mhm.
right? Even from your coach, from your parents, was it something that was just kind of laughed off, like, oh, you don't have to look like that, like just be yourself, kid, that kind of a thing?
Mhm.
Did you ever have you felt like a very serious and helpful conversation about body image with any adults around you?
Mhm. Um, yeah, I mean, in terms of my coach, so I had two coaches. Well, actually, I had quite a bit of coaches in my high school days, because I played high school soccer at Western, and then I also played club soccer. So, remembering right, I don't think we ever really had a conversation. Like, none of my coaches and I really ever had a conversation about body image or what our bodies needed to look like. My club coach probably got the closest to it in terms of like he was like, you guys need to make sure you're fit enough to be playing this sport. But it never, with any of my coaches, was ever a conversation of like, don't feel shamed for not looking a certain way. Because I played on a soccer team throughout high school, on my high school team and in my club team, with girls who were of all different shapes and sizes.
Right.
And
Exactly.
it's funny to think about it too, because like I would never look at somebody who was like smaller or bigger than I was and think that they were ugly. But then I'd look at myself and be you suck, you are a piece of shit. Why would I
Right.
think that of myself when I would never say that to somebody else? My coaches never really had a big impact on body image or anything like that. Um, Other adults in my life, I mean, I had a mentor in high school from my church, and I had like some conversations with her back and forth about body image and how I was feeling insecure certain days. And she would just like encourage me to try and find the confidence in myself. Um, I mean, I feel like there was really only so much that she could say to me. Because I do think a lot of times in high school, when it came to body image conversations, I just kind of had them go in one ear and out the other because a lot of it was just kind of the same in a way.
Right. Kind of
Especially,
cliches and
yeah, especially when I think that she would never say it to me, but she probably got tired of me talking about it. And it was probably
mm,
just kind of like, oh, this is the same thing over and over again. I've been trying to encourage you with this for however long, and I don't know what else to say. So I'm just going to say the same thing.
mhm.
Which I totally understand. Like I've had conversations like that with friends before where I'm just like, I'm telling you the same thing. Why aren't you listening to me? I think a big factor in my body image as well kind of had to do with my parents. I love my parents so much and they're amazing. And
I
they
agree.
did so many good things in like parenting me. But I
Mhm.
definitely think part of the body image issues came from my mom. That's because like Pat, you've seen my parents before, right? Like you kind of remember what they look like. My dad is like this skinny guy. My whole family's short. We call each other hobbits, and it's really funny. But I like to describe him as this short little hobbit man because that's like it kind of is what he looks like. I mean, if you saw all of us, you'd be like, oh, they're all shorties. Like this is hilarious. They're all a hobbit family. And my mom is a little bit shorter than him, and she is a little bit heavier set. She's not unhealthy though. Like she's a healthy person. She exercises as much as she can, but I think it was one of those things after she gave birth to us that she just didn't like shake off that weight from after having children, and then it just kind of stayed, and it never went away. But I know that that was and is something that she is still insecure about, and that was a topic that I heard her talk about a lot in terms of my dad, because like my dad is this super fit young looking guy. Like people would comment about it all the time, and my mom felt really insecure about it because nobody ever really like talked to her about health type things or like looking healthy or looking good. And so that was something that she
Right.
had and still does kind of, really struggle with. And so that was something, as myself growing up, that I really wanted to be like conscientious about with her, because I wanted her to feel like she was, worth loving and, worth being talked about by people. So, and I know it's still hard for her. Like she's talked about it before with me, but yeah, that definitely was something that was really hard, because like that was something that she struggled with. And not that my dad like didn't love her. I can tell that my parents are so in love, and it's so great. There was only so much love that my dad could give, but it still wasn't enough for her to feel like she was, worth something.
I think in the end, your own voice is usually the loudest
Hmm.
when it comes to how you feel about yourself.
Yeah, exactly. So
So going into junior and senior year, what did things start to look like?
yeah, so it was actually like towards the end of my junior year, or I should say our junior year, because we went to school together.
Good.
um, so like towards the end of our junior year, it just like came out of nowhere where all of a sudden I just like kept getting acne like all over my face. And it wasn't like like when you're a teenager, you get like a pimple like here and there and it's fine, it'll go away in a week. But this was like the gnarly cystic acne where it doesn't go away and it hurts. And I had never had it before. And so I was really confused. I was really angry. I was really sad. Now this is when my mindset shifted, because I was so hyper focused on what my face looked like that I really stopped caring about what my body looked like, which was kind of nice because I wasn't so focused on what my body needed to look like. But again, it still shifted to something else where I was thinking about it like all the time. I started to get this cystic acne, and it just really weighed me down. Whenever I go to like hang out with friends, I think it weighed me down a lot because people were trying to help. I remember a lot of the girls on my club soccer team's moms were trying to like come up to me after games and talk about remedies that they had done before. And they're like coming
Putting
to me with,
essential oils on your face.
yeah, but they're like coming to me, and their daughters as well just have like glowing skin. Like their skin was just so perfect. And I was just like, how are you going to sit there and tell me that I should do this when you have perfect skin? Like you, and they never told me that they had acne like I had before. Like they're just like, oh, like rub a banana peel on your face before bed. Like literally that's what somebody told me. And I did it. And I was like, this is so stupid. Like I can't believe I'm rubbing a banana peel on my face before bed. Just the smell of bananas for a while just really wanted to make me punch someone in the face. And so yeah, it was just really hard trying to live with that. And I remember one day before school, I was just like really feeling down, just really feeling honestly like depressed about myself and the way that I looked. It was before school started. So I was sitting in this was my senior year, by the way. And I was sitting in the school parking lot loitering, even though that wasn't allowed. I don't think we don't think we were allowed
So there
to
are big no loitering
loiter
signs.
in our school parking lot. But my best friend at the time, Tori, good old Tori, love her to death. I texted her and asked her to come into my car. And so she sat in the passenger seat and I was in the driver's seat. And I just remember like just bawling. Like I just started weeping in front of her. And she had no idea because I hadn't ever talked about it to anyone. I honestly was really embarrassed about it because it all of a sudden just like came out of nowhere.
Right.
And none of my other friends were really dealing with it either. And so I didn't really know who to go to. But then this one day I just broke down in tears. And I told her it was because I wasn't feeling confident in myself. I just felt really ashamed. And one of the things that I was feeling and that I told her was that I thought that she and the other girls in our friend group didn't want to like be around me because I looked this way. And that's when she like kind of started to understand. And she was like, oh my gosh, no, like why would we ever think that? And she was like, honestly, I don't ever think that you are ugly. Like I never look at your face and think, oh my gosh, she has so much acne on her face. Cause she's like, you're so much more than that. You're so much more than what's on your face. And that was one of the first conversations about this insecurity that I had that really like stuck in my brain. And I think it was because it was such an emotional thing for me. Like it was just such an
Right.
emotional morning. But I was so thankful that I was able to have that conversation with her in the Western Christian parking lot that morning. And that those words have continued to stick all these years.
Meaning for me, when I hear that, my first reaction is, what? Like, why would I not hang out with you because of something on your face?
Yeah.
But for you, that's such a real thing of like, you're making all these associations of, well, I'm insecure about this. Everyone must see it right now.
Hmm. Yeah.
And no, but I'm glad you had that opportunity for her to speak that. Even just to stamp out that lie is huge, because if she hadn't told you, I feel like you would have just lived with that assumption.
Yeah. Now, it didn't get easier after that conversation, of course. I mean, it made me feel a little bit more secure in my friendships because of that, because of what she told me. But also, my senior year of high school was a year that I just like felt really strong in my faith. It was a year that I had really grown in like my relationship with God. And I think that that had a lot to do with the people that I surrounded myself with as well. even though it was still a really hard year in terms of like my image and stuff like that. I had shared some verses with you, Pat, of like what had influenced me. And the first one was actually a verse that somebody had shared with me when I was just like feeling really down about myself. And that one was Proverbs 4:23. And it says, above all else, guard your heart, for everything you do flows from it. The encouragement that they had attached with that verse was like, you like feeling so insecure about yourself and like just feeling so down about yourself all the time is just going to continue. Like it's just going to continue to fester because that's all that you're thinking about. And this like really depressive mindset is what's stuck on your brain and is stuck in your heart. And that is flowing from your heart because that's all you're thinking about. And so they were like, you need to get out of that mindset. And once you start seeing yourself as the person that you truly are, then that beauty is going to start to flow from your heart. And, you know, once you start to be more confident in yourself, like stop telling people that you have acne because then they're going to see it more. Like once you start doing these things, then you're going to feel more like yourself. You're going to feel more beautiful. You're going to feel more confident.
I like that because they're speaking into a core desire rather than I feel like the symptom. A lot of people they'll try to speak to the symptom
Mm-hmm.
and tell you things like, "No, you're beautiful. What are you talking about?"
Yeah.
And kind of almost like put a band-aid on a flu or something.
Yeah.
When I mean it's not an easy thing to say too, to say, you know, you're thinking all wrong.
Mm-hmm.
And I find that with myself, it's often what works the best when you go to the core of what is that desire. Like that desire is to ultimately like gain approval, gain love.
Yeah.
And when your mind is stuck in a place of this is the only place that I can get approval, like my physique and my appearance,
Yeah.
in the same way that acne is it I mean acne is barely makes up your entire body.
Yeah.
That mindset change is something that I really love because, like I said, people often try to attack the symptom rather than the mindset itself.
Mm-hmm.
But sorry, continue.
Yeah. No, you're good. Um, and then another verse that really played a huge part into this journey in high school was Genesis 1:27. And it says, so God created mankind in his own image. In the image of God, he created them. Male and female, he created them. And I remember during this season of my life, my pastor was speaking a lot on this verse, like every Sunday. It was like every Sunday it was about this verse. And I was just kind of sitting there at first and I was just kind of like, oh yeah, like we're made in his image.
Like every sermon, yeah.
Yeah. And then one day it just kind of clicked because he used the Latin words imago Dei. And for some reason I was just like, huh? And then I realized like, oh my gosh, this has to be God working through my pastor right now because this is exactly what I've been needing to hear. And why have I not been like actively listening to this? It was just so good to have that reminder every Sunday, even though it took a couple of Sundays for me to like fully grasp it. And I actually wound up getting the words Imago Dei tattooed on my wrist because it was such a like moment for me. So I have it right here and it's been here since senior year of high school. But
Pretty sure senior year we weren't allowed to have
we
tattoos.
weren't, Pat. We were not. I was kind of a rebel back then. It's fine. But yeah, I just like that was something that was such a struggle for me, like body image and stuff like that. But then just realizing like, no, like I am made in the image of God and it says so in his word. And I really want to have that constant reminder. So slapped a tattoo on my wrist about it. But even to this day, like I'll feel really insecure about myself, whether it's my physique or like acne that I have on my face still. And then I'll just look down at my wrist and it's like a nice little reminder on days that it can be a little more tough. a good reminder for people out there, like, you're made in the image of God, and what more could you need? Like, we're the closest beings to our creator, and what a cool thing to think about and to be reminded of.
Expand on your Harry Potter illustration, because although I, being a Christian private school kid, have not read Harry Potter, nothing against that. I just literally haven't read it yet. I really like that illustration,
Yeah.
and I think I mean, so many people have read it. I think it's something people can relate to.
Yeah. This illustration actually came about in my college years, because sometimes body image issues don't go away. So um, I believe I was having a conversation with my mom over the phone because I went to school in Illinois and my mom and dad were still in California. So I had to reach them by cell phone, people.
Telegraph? Oh,
Sometimes FaceTime, most of the time FaceTime, but this time I was calling her on the phone. Just like talking about how I was feeling really insecure with my acne, and again, just like feeling like I was really like unworthy of being loved by people and being accepted by people. And she used this picture of the phoenix from Harry Potter. So if you guys don't know what a phoenix, I'm like trying to talk to the people of the world. Patrick. So a phoenix like is this bird that it grows old, and then once it gets old it dies, but it bursts into flames and becomes ash. But then an interesting thing about the phoenix is from its ashes that it just burned into is reborn and becomes a new creation and a new version of itself. And my mom was using this picture of the phoenix from Harry Potter and the Chamber of Secrets because that's where Harry's first introduced to this bird. It's Dumbledore's bird. And he walks into the room and he's like, "Oh, a bird." And then it just bursts into flames and Harry starts like freaking out. He's like, "Sir, your bird, it just caught fire." And then Dumbledore has to explain like, "Harry," I'm trying to like make their voices, but he's like, this bird, it does this. And it's basically what I just explained is like it is reborn from its ashes, and phoenixes have this like symbol of rebirth and of hope and renewal. And that's something that she was like encouraging me with, but not just like, "Oh, Easton, you need to be a phoenix." Like she was trying to encourage me with the fact that like I can incorporate Jesus into it. And she was like, from the ashes of you like dying to this way of thinking, when you're reborn and you allow Jesus to like come into you and like help you like form these new ideas of who you are instead of what you thought before, Jesus's light will shine through like the cracks of the ashes as you're being reborn into this new person. And I mean that can go into the gospel as well. But in terms of my story, like that was just a really cool way of me being able to visualize what that actually meant. I was like, wow, like that is such a cool way of seeing this new perspective of who I can be when I, let myself die to these old thoughts, and just letting Jesus shine through me. Because when I am able to let Jesus shine through me, that is when I'll be my most beautiful version of myself.
and becoming ash is the scary part,
Yes, being
because
refined.
it almost seems like there's no guarantee that you'll emerge victorious and on fire.
Mm-hmm.
I think the moments where you feel like ash, it seems like the end.
Mm-hmm. But it doesn't end there because Jesus has more for you, which is,
You'll become a
yeah,
fiery bird.
fiery bird. Here I come. Like those next couple of months after my mom talking to me about that, I definitely had like a rebirth, so to say. Now, I will say that I have had many rebirths since that rebirth.
I like that.
It doesn't just happen once, I don't think. At least it hasn't happened for me. And I think that that is also another beautiful thing about like the way that Jesus works in our lives, and specifically in my story with body image. I've continued since that conversation with my mom. I've continued to like fluctuate between like having body image issues with my acne and my physique for the past couple of years. Sometimes it's harder than others, but it's still really nice to be able to have the biggest thing is just like, really leaning into the words that the Lord has for me. Because even if I had nothing and all that I had were the words from Jesus that he's like spoken into my life that have been so true into who I am, like that's all I'll ever need.
So to touch on this part, but I was really curious about college
Mhm.
and how being a collegiate athlete affects body image because and you brought this up in the beginning, but when I first thought, like I said, when I first thought of having you on the podcast, that was the perspective would love to hear more about.
Yeah.
As a collegiate athlete, you're not just playing sports, like you're really playing
Hmm.
sports. Like money is being poured into the school
Yeah.
to fund an entire program. Like there are fans. I remember when I realized I went to UCLA, which is a huge sports school. When I realized people love the team even though they never went there, like my mind was blown.
Hmm.
And so, how does that pressure play into body image? And I also distinctly remember you saying at one point a few years ago, I don't know if you remember, how there would be times where you felt like you were too fit, and then other times where it's like you're not fit enough.
Hmm.
And in my mind, I thought, how's that even possible? I mean, if I was a college athlete working out all the time, I mean, too fit, I can't even imagine that. But
Yeah.
speak to that. What did you mean by that?
Yeah. I'll start with this. With me being a collegiate athlete, I think that that really like especially now not being a collegiate athlete really skewed my way of thinking what it should be like to work out and to be healthy.
Hmm.
Because for the longest time I solely worked out so that I could be in like tip top shape for college soccer. Um, that honestly kind of made me not like soccer a lot, especially in
Wow.
college, because I wasn't enjoying working out anymore. It wasn't like, oh, I'll go work out so that I can like feel healthy. It was like, I'm doing this so
Right.
that I can be the best of the best and I have to perform and I have to be a certain way so that I can play, so I can get playing time, and I have to look a certain way so that, you know, the pictures that they take of us look good. um but like going back to I remember saying that. I do. The comment about being too fit and then not being fit enough. I think what I could have said better is like looking fit and not looking fit enough. I think is probably how I would say that now, because I remember coming back from my freshman year of college soccer and I had lost a lot of weight because of how much running we had done. um, which wasn't bad. Like I was in shape. I was like getting a lot of playing time and it was really good. I was like, oh, well, there's a lot of girls on my team who are like more muscular. So I need to work on building my muscle. So I wasn't focusing as much on doing my cardio and I was mostly lifting weights. And then I came back and was told that I had too much muscle and that I needed to shave off some of my muscle and do more cardio. And so it was just like, it was like, what am I supposed to look
What do
like?
you
What am
want?
I supposed to do? Like, it was just this constant battle of back and forth of like, what do you want me to look like? Like, I feel like I need to look a certain way to be able to like fit this mold of like how I need to be able to perform. And of course, there definitely is that balance of in college soccer lifting weights and doing cardio like running and stuff like that. But I was just so confused. I was like, I thought I was doing it right and I thought that I looked good and I thought that I was playing well, but then whatever I did in the gym just wasn't good enough. Wasn't good enough or it was too much. Yeah, that was just definitely really hard. Throughout my 4 years of college playing soccer is really trying to find that balance, but also not really getting a lot of the help that I wanted. But I had this image in my head from what my coaches and a lot of my teammates looked like of like what my body should be and like trying to do different workouts to try and reach that and thinking I was getting there, but then being told that I need to do more of something else in terms of like, you know, how I would be able to perform if I did something. And I was just like, this is not helping me at all. Yeah, that was definitely really tough during college. And after college, it just didn't get worse, but it just like my perspective had to completely shift because I was like, oh, well, I'm not doing this anymore to perform. So now what do I do? Like I'm not a college athlete anymore. I don't have to be running. I don't have to be lifting weights. What does that mean? And then I really wasn't doing anything because I was like, oh, it's fine. I don't have to do this anymore because I'm not trying to make my body look a certain way or trying to have it do something to perform a certain way. I still lost a lot of confidence in myself because I wasn't working out. Or
Right, because you're so used to that grind, I'm sure.
yeah, and then once I started picking up like working out again, running, lifting weights and stuff like that, I felt very unmotivated because I was like, well, I'm not doing this for a purpose anymore. I'm not doing this for a sport. What's the point? And that I think that was something that was definitely very toxic in terms of like the athlete culture. Was it was never a conversation during or even after I stopped playing soccer where it was like you can still work out and enjoy it. It was always just you're doing this workout so that you can look a certain way and so that you can perform a certain way, and that's all it's ever going to be.
What advice would you give the incoming freshman girl soccer players right now?
Yeah. I mean, I definitely would say that it's good to follow the workouts that are being given. I think something that I wish could have been told differently to me was like you're doing a good job at what you're doing like in terms of your workouts because all of our bodies are different. They're not all going to look the same.
Yeah.
Um Even if I did the same workouts as some of my other teammates who I felt like in my mind were stronger or leaner, had more muscle, like our bodies would still be different if we had worked out and done the same workouts for 3 months straight. Our bodies would be different.
Exactly. Right.
So, my encouragement to incoming freshmen soccer players or just athletes in general would just be do the best you can, work hard, don't worry about what you look like, just try to have fun and be
Mm,
confident in yourself. Because I wish that I had had somebody who told me that when I was a freshman.
yeah.
And I could probably talk a whole hour more about what it's like being an ex-athlete and working out and what that can mean for you, but obviously we don't have time for that and that's okay, but I mean, it definitely has been an adjustment trying to get used to
Right.
not working out for the purpose of performing. Now it's just for the purpose of being healthy and feeling good in my own skin.
The key word there, I think, is healthy.
Hmm.
And this is something I wanted to bring up too when you talk about how those girls could have worked out insanely hard and still had the same body shape and body type. For me, I play a lot of pickup basketball,
Hmm.
and I've learned when I'm out there running, like I'm a relatively thin dude. There'll be guys out there that are much heavier set, bigger than me, with cardio way more insane than mine.
Hmm.
It really doesn't speak to how I guess, healthy you are by outward appearance. And I think healthy is the key word here,
Mhm.
because if you strive for that, I mean, that in itself is a good enough goal, I feel like,
Yeah.
when it comes to taking care of your body. The last topic I wanted to touch on that would that I've thought about is just the larger, and you touched on this, the larger culture of body image and health, and especially social media.
Yeah.
And I think you touched on that when you said back in 2010, 2011, the narrative at that time was right. You said like super skinny,
Yeah.
like zero fat. Obviously, '08 is when the iPhone came out, and then Instagram was 2010 or something like that.
Yeah.
And I'm sure that fed into a lot of it.
Mhm.
Right now, I don't really know how to describe the environment right now, and I kind of wanted to get it from a female
Yeah.
perspective of, at this point, we have so much awareness of like, yeah, social media affects self-esteem, social media affects the way you see yourself, the way you see your body, and you hear it all the time now. Like, there's so much evidence, it's not even refutable.
Yeah.
But I think the real question is, what are we doing with that? Where do you see the culture right now and where we stand? There's still so many advertisements on social media with insanely skinny models,
Yeah.
even though companies are trying to be more self-aware and monitor themselves.
Yeah.
What is your view right now of where we're going?
Yeah, for sure. I definitely think that I've seen a shift in social media on people trying to be more body positive, which I think is
Mhm.
really helpful and really good for a lot of people who, I don't know, kind of felt like attacked by that when they were younger. And even for like the generations that are growing up with social media, I think it's really helpful and really healthy that they're like kind of being raised in this new era, I guess you could say, of like girls who are being more body positive. Um, but then on the other side of it, like there's still Victoria's Secret models who have shows like all the time where they're all super skinny, and the model industry is also just whack anyways because, for example, Kendall Jenner is a Victoria's Secret model and she's like super skinny. I think that she is still really healthy, but like imagine her physique but somebody different, and they could walk into a modeling agency and they could tell that girl that she's too skinny. I mean, she's too fat, that she needs to be skinnier.
Mhm.
And that just blows my mind that that's still happening because like this girl literally has no body fat. How could you want her to lose negative body fat? That doesn't make any sense. But something that has really influenced me in terms of social media has like been those girls who are more body positive. There's a video that I um really like of this girl who's like doing stand-up comedy, and she's a little bit like heavier set, and she's talking about like when she says, oh, like I'm just really not, like I'm feeling kind of chubby, or like I'm feeling kind of fat today. And people are like, no, you're beautiful. And she's like, I didn't say I was ugly. I just said I was fat. Like just because I'm fat doesn't automatically mean I'm ugly. And that's so true. Like I never really thought of it that way. I mean, I never thought that people who were fat were ugly. But like for some reason, people just automatically associate ugly and fat together.
Mhm.
And I think that that
Mhm.
is the biggest like mindset that needs to change, because the way that we've talked about this, like I think we said this a couple minutes before, but just like the way you are on the outside is not the same way you are on the inside. And this girl who was doing stand-up comedy and just I saw it on, I think it was Instagram or something like that, just like spoke
Yeah.
thousands of truths into my life, and I'm sure so many other people's lives, that they saw that video, because it's so true that you can still be fat or heavy or set and still be attractive to people and still be beautiful or still be handsome and still feel good in your own skin. Now I'm not saying that people should just like go and binge and be unhealthy and get fat, but
Right.
there's some people who had lived lifestyles to where they got to that point and now they're in this place, but they can still feel good in their own skin. Like they don't have to shame themselves for looking a certain way. And that's definitely the shift that I've been seeing in social media, is that people are being more positive about the way that they're looking or the way that other people are looking. And I think that it's really good for our society right now that that's happening.
I give a lot of props to those people who almost own it,
Mhm.
like the girls who say, "Yeah, I am fat."
Yeah.
Kind of like the way that that comedian, the way she said it, you know, the tonality. I think even the attitude, that kind of thing, really changes the narrative
Mhm.
because I find that, and this is speaking for more like a larger generational change, with boomers, a lot of it was like, don't talk about it.
Yeah.
Like, don't mention depression, don't mention anxiety or self-esteem issues,
Yeah.
and you'll be okay.
Mhm.
And we've almost swung in a completely different way of like, not only are we not talking about it, we're like joking about
Mhm.
it and owning it.
Yeah.
And I'm almost, that's of all the things that people bash millennials and Gen Z for, that's one thing I'm very proud of is people are realizing they can own things and then inject humor into it.
Mhm.
But you know, at least I hope so for the most part, it's coming from a place of compassion and
Yeah.
sincerity. I guess any final words as far as how do you feel right now and like what would you say going forward for anyone listening who maybe they're like in the ash period
Mhm.
where they don't feel like a phoenix at all
Yeah.
and they hear your story and their first thought is maybe, well, good for her, she got out of it,
Mhm.
or at the very least is at a better place. What would you say?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I definitely say, like I kind of mentioned before, is the way that I feel about this kind of goes in waves. I've had a lot of rebirth moments. And so it's not always easy. And I feel like as I continue to grow older, it's not going to be any easier. Having those little reminders for yourself of what makes you feel most you, what makes you feel most confident, that is so important. Um, there's definitely like days where I'm not feeling good, but sometimes I'm just like, I gotta fake it till I make it. And I need to, sometimes I have to fake being confident. And then like throughout the day, I'm like, oh yeah, no, I'm feeling good about myself. Like I am a good friend. I'm a good coworker. Like I'm funny. I am smart. Like I can do all these things. And I really just remind myself of like the things that I am able to do and that I'm capable of doing, and that seems to really help me just feel more confident in myself because confidence is key. Like, I don't know what, if that's the one thing that resonates with people is just like really finding something that makes you feel super confident and finding something that just like fits your niche. Like, that is just so important for making you feel most you. Oh my gosh, there was one other thing I wanted to say and I totally forgot. ah, Oh, I think it was just like surrounding yourself with people who fit into your niche, but also just like make you feel most you. Because those people were really important in my life and still are to this day. And being able to have people like rally around you and just make you feel like really good about yourself is really nice.
And I wanted to add too before we end that all of this, and I should have someone else come on to speak for the guy side of it
Hmm.
because there are a lot of guys who the conversation hasn't even been brought up at all whatsoever, like the words body image, the word self-esteem.
Yeah.
And it seems so much of a issue that a lot of girls and a lot of women have had to tackle and have done so very well. But resources, I would say, I would argue, are very geared towards them.
Yeah.
I guess just for guys listening, like it words like self-esteem and confidence like apply to them too.
Hmm.
And it's not a different battle. Like it's the same thing in the sense it's different in the sense that women have gone a lot more, have gone through a lot more in this area, but it's the same in the sense that we're all looking for approval.
Yeah.
And we're all looking for something that we can show from the outside in order to gain that approval. But also, what is that thing on the shelf behind you? Because I keep looking at it.
Oh, it's just been staring at you this whole time. It's like a little plush owl.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. He's
Nice.
he's a little autumn owl. He's just chilling up there. Here he is.
Does he have a name?
No.
Okay. I guess we're ending the podcast there.
All right.
Thanks, Easton.
Thanks, Pat.